everyone. Uh, Welcome again to another version of the Focus on Geothermal webinar series, a partnership between Think Energy and Enerchange. It's a bit of an unusual schedule for our webinar today, but that's also because we're featuring a very special topic. Today we are discussing the use of drones or unmanned aerial vehicles for geothermal applications or operations in the Philippines by the Energy Development Corporation. Our guest today is Erickson Del Rosario, who is the lead of GIS and mapping services under the Applied Geothermal Technology Group of EDC. The group is tasked with delivering maps as well as spatial data and developing GIS solutions for the geothermal operations of EDC, and also one of the few licensed RPA or remotely piloted aircraft controllers of the company. For our audience, you are free to ask questions. There is a questions tab here and on our webinar interface, and we'll get to those questions after the presentation. And now I turn it over to you, Erickson or Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Carlo. Thank you again for providing us the opportunity to present in this webinar. So everyone, good afternoon, and maybe from the other side of the planet, good morning, if there are listeners coming from there. I'll begin my presentation. The title of my presentation is the unmanned aerial experience or drone use cases in EDC geothermal operations. Okay, so our agenda for today, to begin with my presentation, I'll have a brief introduction of who is EDC and its business, and why and how do we utilize drones. So then we'll move forward with a specific topic about asset monitoring using this drone technology and some of our future plans with regards to these drones. So to start, just an introduction of who is EDC. So we are the Energy Development Corporation, a global and diversified renewable energy company under the Lopez Group. So we're based in the Philippines, and we're the leading 100% renewable energy producer in the Philippines. So currently we have an installed capacity of 1,480 megawatts. So this is our vision to be the leading global geothermal energy company and key provider of clean, renewable 24/7 energy. And our mission is to forge collaborative pathways for a decarbonized and regenerative future. So beyond sustainability, how EDC is making a difference, besides from being uh, the largest vertically integrated company in the world, meaning to say that we operate both the power plant and the steam fields. Uh, we're the only 100% renewable energy company in the Philippines. So we're also forging collaborative pathways to a decarbonized and regenerative future. So we're partnering with our customers, our stakeholders, and environment, our communities, to become a net zero and carbon neutral company. Okay, so moving forward, so our portfolio consists of 100% renewable energy. So majority of those are geothermal energy. So it's our main source. But we also have other sources like wind, solar, and hydro. So as you can see on the map, we're operating throughout the country. So okay, so to begin with, why do we use drones? So first and foremost, EDC's geothermal fields are remote and expansive. So most of our geothermal plants and steam fields are located in remote locations and really expansive. So very large area of land. So we're also working in mountainous terrains and forested areas. That's why accessibility is very limited. And if you're a worker in EDC, it's really tedious to stroll through or when you're conducting monitoring and inspection because of this large area. So aside from those, our area has hazards. So along the way there are hazards. So later I'll show you some of this. So we want to address the what we call 3Ds, the dull, dirty, and dangerous tasks. So of course, when we say dull, it's performing monotonous, repetitive, and tedious tasks. So we want to address those so personnel can focus more on other tasks. And then dirty because since we're in a remote area and there's really a harsh environment and sometimes unsanitary conditions. So an example is when we're doing well discharge activities, there is a possibility of high concentration of H2S that might be present. Or in case of crisis situations, for example, if there's a calamity and we need to respond in a contaminated area, so drones can do those jobs. And lastly, for the dangerous tasks, so aside from any situation that is hazardous to people, such as for example, inspecting a tall structure like a transmission tower or working on fire fire fighting scene. So those are can be handled by drones. So we avoid direct exposure to our people to these dangerous conditions. So that's the gist of using those drones. So just to be familiarized and to provide you a background on what are the drones in the EDC fleet. So we're using multi-rotor units. As you can see, most of these are DJI. So just a disclaimer, we're not endorsing DJI, but primarily it's because these are the only available units in the market in the Philippines. That's why we're and not to mention the drones of DJI are really in terms of technology they're really above way above the standards. So some of the general specifications of these drones, so in varying sizes and weight, so ranges from 1 kilo to 3.5 kilos. It has an operating altitude of 500 meters above ground. And the operating range of these drones is around 2 to 10 kilometers. So we can fly the drone as far as 10 kilometers. It has a maximum speed of 72 to 97 kilometers per hour. It has a level 4 wind resistance. So if you're thinking if the drone can withstand, let's say a moderate breeze, yes. But of course, if there are typhoons, the drone cannot withstand that anymore. So the power source, it's battery operated. Its endurance is around 20 to 55 minutes, depending on the unit. And the positioning system that is being used by the units are GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and Beidou. Basically, these are the 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 location or the location sensors of the drone. Okay, for the payloads or the cameras that's installed in the drone units, these are gimbal-mounted optical cameras with digital zoom. So we have it can take photos up to 48 megapixels and shoot some video up to 4K resolution. And the thermal or the IR camera, the resolution is 640 by 512 pixels. So other features of these drones, they have the vision positioning system, an obstacle detection and avoidance for the later units, return to home function in case your drone flew away or becomes out of range with the controller. So there's a return to home function. It will automatically land where it took off. And they're also capable of automated flight using flight planning applications. So just to note, our EDC drones are registered uh, and our controllers are licensed through the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines. So they're the ones regulating the our drone units. Okay. So some of the missions where drone played significant roles. So these are some of the critical tasks that we're doing. So there are asset inspections, pad preparations whenever we were going to drill new wells, and other well activities like the quenching activities of the wells, geohazard assessments, and watershed and environmental monitoring. So to provide you some history, where did it all started? In 2017, our security team uh, wants to maximize the use of the security personnel. So in this area, I think this is in Bicol, the whole stretch is around 3 kilometers, and we used to deploy 5 security posts, and I think this is 11 personnel. So we think of ways how we can efficiently reduce the number of security deployed in that area and deploy them in other areas, so efficiently utilizing their posts. So we've tried using these drones. So when we use the drone, the area has been designated as a roving area. So meaning it's a moving or a patrolling system manned by only 3 personnel who are trained drone controllers. So uh, instead of walking in this area, they're now using drones to monitor patrol the area. And then another use is for safety inspection. So this is an example of an aerial coverage for critical works. Uh, so as you can see, these are linemen working on the transmission towers. So just to see if they're safe, uh, we're using drones to document the activity. And of course, if we see something unusual or something different, we can immediately respond. So we're also using this to inspect the transmission tower itself. So for example, if there are corrosions in the towers or in the insulators, so we can look at it easily. And of course, in the other pictures, you can see there are uh, where we have some geohazard areas in the location of the tower. So if we're just looking at the base of the tower, we can't see this landslide area. So that's the drone really works. So again, these are geohazard areas. So quarterly, I think quarterly, we're conducting geohazard assessments in our project sites. Of course, the Philippines is frequently visited by natural calamities like typhoons, sometimes earthquakes. So we need to regularly monitor the situations in our areas. And then uh, in this picture, this is a low altitude remote sensing activity conducted after the Cotabato earthquake of 2019. So we're monitoring the thermal areas to see if there are some anomalies. There are movements in the area. So there, we can also use this drone for exploration, for exploring other geothermal areas. So basically, it's the same concept, using the thermal map, the thermal cameras, check if there are heat sources on the ground. Okay. And lastly, this is the asset integrity monitoring. So in EDC, we put maintenance to higher priority to protect our assets. So in this picture, we're looking at pipeline segments. So in this two small pictures, this is a RGB photo and a thermal image of the same location. So if you will notice this line, it looks intact using if you look at the RGB image, but in the thermal camera, if you're using a thermal camera, then you'll see that there are some damages in the insulation. So this was already confirmed by our workers in the area that there's some seems to be damages in this insulation part of the pipeline. Okay, so our EDC drones facilitate rapid data acquisition, particularly for areas that are unsafe and inaccessible. So in EDC sites, there are lots of areas that are inaccessible and unsafe because of the natural hazards. So now I'll move on the how do we do the asset management, the drone-based asset management or asset monitoring in EDC. So this is our methodology. So we start with the planning. So we set a schedule, determine flight patterns, the flight specifications. When we say flight specifications, we're thinking of the altitude that we need to use or we need to deploy the drone, and how big is the area. So those are the specs because we need to input those in the flight planning application. And then we're also checking for the weather related disturbances if there's an incoming weather disturbance in our point of interest. And then to validate all those mentioned in the planning, we conduct recon activities. So in the recon activities, we will see what are the actual hazards in the area and what flight type are we going to use. So basically, it's just if we can do manual or automated flight. So if there are lots of hazards, like for example, trees and other tall structures, low-lying cables, then we do it manually. But if it's open, uh, we can use the automate function of the flight planning application. So basically, it's just checking of the actual site conditions. Then For the data acquisition, this is the data capture proper. So prior flight, we conduct pre-flight activities. Uh, we check the unit if all the batteries are charged, the remote controls are charged, uh, the compass calibration of the drone unit is working, the gyro or the other sensors of the drone are functioning well, the propellers are unobstructed. So these are all the pre-flight activities. And then of course the flight execution, and then the post-flight. So after the execution of the activity, before storing the drone, we also check them just to see if they are not damaged, or there are no abnormal functions in the batteries and the other components. And then, so it doesn't stop there. After the capturing, of course, there's data processing. So actually, this is a tedious step because uh, after downloading the data, we need to post-process the data. So using different softwares. So if there's a thermal image that we capture, we need to post-process that using a radiometric software, either from FLIR or from DJI. And then after that, we'll run this in our GIS, in our GIS software for um, mosaicing and for other post-processing functions. And then lastly, we generate the output. So this is the report and the recommendations. So the drone-based infrared thermography is done quickly and safely uh, conduct and safely conduct monitoring surveys in a non-invasive manner. So we do not need to go near the pipelines to conduct this monitoring, and we don't need to touch or use other probing instruments to get the temperature. So we're just using the thermal camera. So the thermal anomalies along a target pipe surface is influenced by the thermal energy emitted from within the pipeline and the ambient heat at the surface. So in this photo, what you can see is different claddings. So these different claddings have different emissivity values. So we need to know what are what are the emissivity values of these materials. So these activities are done by a uh, certified thermographer. So as we're just capturing the data, but the other activities, particularly in the post processing, are done by a certified thermographer. So the drone-based thermography makes our process and decision making fast. So before, we conduct manual walkthrough using handheld thermal cameras, and we do spot check measurements. So we really cannot capture everything using a handheld camera. And of course, our personnel are exposed to the environment and the natural hazards. But after using the drone, we can say that we have already semi-automate the process using the drone mounted thermal camera, and we can work away from the pipeline or the hazards, so we can do remote work deployment. So using the drone based infrared thermal, we were able to identify parts of the steam line that requires rehabilitation or replacement quickly and safely. So in this photo, this is the same pipeline segments, and as you can see in the radiometric image, there seems to be some thermal anomalies. There are heat losses or heat leaks in the insulation. So uh, basically what we're doing, we're scanning the whole stretch of the pipeline. So in this map, as you can see, we've noted some of these findings. Uh, then we will submit this, or we'll send this to our maintenance team for confirmation. Uh, After, if it is confirmed that it's already damaged, they will schedule the replacement of the insulation. So there are also technical concerns coupled by the actual site conditions, provide key issues, no, when conducting drone-based surveys. So an example is some of the target areas are really inaccessible. Either they are covered with shelters, or sometimes even the low-lying vegetation. So this is really challenging because the drone cannot fly in this area. So what we do is, in this case, we conduct an oblique shoot. So we conduct photo capturing the photo from the side, because we can't capture it from the top. And then in other areas, particularly in high altitude areas, the weather condition can change and deteriorate very rapidly. So if there's fog, a, a thick fog, we cannot shoot. We cannot see the ground or the point of interest. So we need to stop the work. And in some cases, there are some signal emitting instruments that can interfere with the drone signals. So these instruments actually, this is seldom, but it's really challenging, because once you encounter this, you will the drone controller and the drone itself will lose their connection. So we need to be aware of that. So through our years of experience, we were able to formulate some safety guidelines in operating our drones. So this is also in line with our life-saving rules. So some of this are, of course, when we keep our RPA. What's RPA? RPA is remotely piloted aircraft. Just to add, the RPA is the local or general recognized term of drones in the Philippines. So that's why we call it RPA. But basically, it's just drones. So we keep our RPA in sight, or what we call visual line of sight. So at all times, and if it cannot be done, we bring an observer or a spotter to assist if needed. So we also remain well clear of, and we do not interfere with manned aircraft operations. So this is very dangerous. So we need to really assure ourselves that we are not interfering with manned aircraft operations. So in EDC sites, since we are in a mountainous area, these are not usual highways of the manned aircraft operations or the passenger aircrafts. But still, we need to make sure. That's why the CAAP, or the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, provide a guidelines that all drones should fly at the maximum of 400 feet or 120 meters above ground. Okay, and then as a drone controller, we need to be familiarized with our drone's capabilities. So if there are adverse weather conditions such as high winds or reduced visibility, we need to stop our work. And uh, we also this is also allowed, not allowed by the law, to conduct a surveillance in areas where there is an expectation of privacy. So without the permission of the person or the people uh, who's in that area. And then we ensure the operating environment is safe and that the operator is competent and proficient. That's why our drones are operated by only by licensed controllers, drone controllers. So as much as possible, no one should handle those drones except those controllers. So we in EDC we have plenty of licensed controllers, and then we secure the necessary permits when flying near or over sensitive infrastructures or property, such as power stations and transmission lines. So we have safety permitting in EDC. So if needed, we need to secure those. And then we there in the Philippines, in some provinces or towns, they also have local ordinances. So we need to we need to check on those if uh, flying is allowed in their areas. And of course, lastly, we do not fly under the influence of alcohol or drugs because it's really prohibited. Okay, so we also develop some working protocols to address these challenges in our activities. So when conducting thermal surveys, we usually conduct this early in the morning. So starting early, it means taking advantage of the flight window between 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. So what's the reason behind? It's because the sun is not yet affecting the ground conditions of the target area. So in contrast with an early evening flight, if allowed, early morning flights ensure that the influence of the ambient temperature has already subsided and that the true temperature of the target that you're measuring is showing. And con- we also conduct the recon surveys to provide us with invaluable intelligence to the drone survey operation. So making it part of the survey program, it's our norm. So here's the two pictures on the right is an example of uh, an activity without recon. So one example is the area is blocked already with a big boulder, and in the lower right picture, the area is fog. There's a thick fog in the area, so the drone cannot operate. So the flight planning and recon survey, what we need to know is what our activities needs to be undertaken, what equipment to bring, and what is the expected output. So whether it's a 2D two-dimensional map, a photo, or a three-dimensional map, we need to determine that because uh, it will affect or it will affect the quality or the what we need, what equipment we need to bring. So we also need to identify the location, just a general overview of the location, the size, and identify the takeoff and landing spots. We're also looking at the time of day, uh, and the weather forecast and the satellite availability. So in these photos, coming from UAV Forecast. It's a website that shows a forecast if a drone in a specific area is good to fly or not. So, for example, it shows the prevailing wind, the gust, the temperature, the rain probability, the cloud cover, and if there's how many satellites are available in those area, and if it's good to fly. So in this case, it's not good to fly. So we're also looking if the area is a highway for manned aircraft operations, and then there we also use the some application to estimate the flight plan or the flight track of our drone. So in this case, this is a DJI ground station. Uh, you can already dictate the altitude of the drone when conducting the mission. Dictate the location, the starting location, and the landing location, and then uh, how many photos do it needs to take before completing the mission. So those are some of the parameters that can be input in the can be an input in the software. Okay, so for the data acquisition, so uh, usually we're conducting automated flight. So when doing automated flight, there's a first pass, second pass, and so on. We need to determine the swath or how the camera looks at the drone. So or the width of the camera that's covered by the drone. So there's also we need to also check if it's a nadir flight or an oblique flight. So the difference is when when conducting nadir flight, so it's basically pointing vertically downwards, and on the oblique, it's shooting sideways. So in some cases, we also need to establish ground control points, particularly in those areas that are remote, because we need these ground control points later in the post processing. This will be the anchors of our photos and images that captured. So this is the flight plan, the flight planning. So we also need to determine the overlaps. So our recommended overlap is at least 75% at the front and 60 at the side. So if we do not consider the overlaps, our image will tend to explode because there's no common denominator between the two images. So when stitching, it looks exploding. So this is an example of post-processed drone image. So coming from different images, it is mosaic into a one large image. And then these are the data processing or orthophoto generation using image processing software. And then, okay, so it's the same. So this is an example of the inspection map as basis for maintenance and repairs. So this is a mosaic thermal image of the from the drone capture. So it's a as you will notice, there are thermal anomalies in one of the pipe that we've captured. So in the comparison, again, the RGB image is showing intact claddings, while the regiometric images display thermal anomalies. So one good thing about you plotting this in GIS, post processing and plotting in GIS, is we can conduct measurements. So basically, we can provide better information or better recommendation to our maintenance team, because we already know how long or what is the length of the damage pipeline. Okay. So moving forward, actually, what we're planning to do uh, is we want to fully automate our drone operation with command and control setup. So there's a what we call flight hub, where the drone units can be remotely controlled through a computer via internet. So we can also set up schedules for fully automated inspection and monitoring activities. So we do not need an operator or a controller to 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 manually control the drone. So these are fully automated. And this is what the DJI drone and the Dock 2 setup is. So the Dock 2, you just need to place it in an open area as long as there's power and internet. So it will already fly on its own even without the controller. So after that, it will go back to this dock setup and then charge by itself. It also has a weather monitoring device. So in case it's raining or there's high wind velocity, uh, it will advise you not to fly, or the drone itself will not fly. So in addition, we're also conducting studies in acquiring advanced sensors and payloads. This will enhance the team capabilities in meeting new use cases. So there's the LiDAR sensor. This is good, especially when you want to have a vertically accurate maps or data, and then some hyperspectral and multispectral sensors for other use cases, like for example, vegetation index or other image analysis. And then we've also seen some sensors that can detect gas. So maybe it's a good addition to our payload cameras. So in summary, the drones, it really augments the capabilities, our capabilities to be efficient in performing our tasks. So we were also able to capitalize the use of drone as a thermography platform, thereby accomplishing tasks that are otherwise dull, dirty, and dangerous. It's an effective condition-based monitoring technique, ensuring our personnel cover large distances without sacrificing the integrity of data captured. And then it also significantly shortens the time needed to identify the thermal anomalies. Well, in general, it shortens the time of the inspection, and it allows the safe and efficient surveillance of the steam field. And in lastly, it also helps in lessening our carbon footprint, but because basically we eliminate the use of vehicles during inspections and field activities. So just to mention, lastly, drones are not the ultimate solution. So, but they're an efficient tool that will help us in accomplishing our tasks. So, okay, so I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. If you want to know more about EDC, you can visit our website, www.energy.com.ph. Or if you have questions, you can email me directly. at this email address, or my colleague Rod Malaluan, who is our thermographer also, uh, through this email. So again, thank you for listening.
Thank you for that presentation. Uh, this is something that's personally very interesting to me because one thing is that I'm also into drones, and the second thing is, of course, I'm also from EDC from
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah. So let's go through some of these questions. We'll try to get through as many of them as possible. You already mentioned this problem with a potential problem with signal interference, and I saw that you also did drone inspection for transmission towers, like
Yes.
the
Yes.
transmission area of the power plant. And then
Mhm.
of course we also have to consider efforts for real-time data monitoring in wells, in pipelines, such as like sensors that transmit data in real time. So I imagine signal interference might be an issue if you're conducting very highly regular drone inspections. Is this something that you've already experienced or something that you're anticipating?
Yeah, actually, yes, we have already experienced those, and we're looking on some ways how do we eliminate those interferences. So basically, designing the flight plan, avoiding those areas with high signal interference. For the cases of transmission lines, as much as possible, we keep ourselves or we keep the drone at least 30 meters away from the transmission towers or the lines. Um, we're also we're also looking at acquiring a new camera that can be that have a zoom function, an optical zoom function, so we do not need to go near those areas.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the other questions. One thing that of course already personally experienced in the EDC sites is that we have very rapidly changing weather, which you already mentioned. And so
Mhm.
I imagine you frequently have to deal with high humidity, some sort of
Yes.
rainfall, high winds. Does this also affect the rate of wear and tear on the drones?
For the older units, yes, because the older units doesn't have or have low ingress protection. But for the newer unit, for the newer drone units, it has high ingress protection. I think IP65 rating, so it's protected with from sudden burst of water and dusts. So basically, the drone, the DJI drones are really quick to see even before the consumers experience those. So I think they already addressed that. So, but of course, as I mentioned earlier, if it's a typhoon, for example, we really can't operate those drones because it will be thrown away by the strong wind.
Yeah, we have one interesting question here from one of our participants. You
Yeah.
already mentioned that there are efforts to equip drones with gas detection technology. And of course,
Yes.
one of the most pressing risks, I would say, in a geothermal environment are H2S leaks. So is there a technology that exists that will allow for remote detection of H2S leaks or areas with high H2S concentration?
Yes. For the gas detection mounted on drones, I think there's a company. I just forgot the name of that company, but they're into gas detection, and actually we're trying to contact them and discuss them about our issues with regards to high H2S. So we're looking at the possibility if we can use those sensors to detect those high H2S.
I mean, that's something that a lot of geothermal companies are probably looking forward to.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. You also mentioned something about dealing with privacy issues. So something that is quite unique, I guess, with one of some of the geothermal sites in the Philippines is that it's very closely integrated with communities. So have
Uh-huh.
you had to deal with with locals asking about drones, what they're doing with them, and how do you address such issues?
Yeah. We haven't experienced those if the community coming to us and asking about drones. So actually prior operating our drones, let's say for in an area where there are that is highly populated, uh, we need to go directly first to the barangay or the officials in the area to inform them that we're conducting such activities. So we just need to secure an approval or not a permit but an approval to them, or just to inform them that we're doing these activities, and do not be bothered by the drone unit. So that's it. We just need to inform them and tell them that we're doing something in that area using drones.
Okay, something that's quite specific to thermal imaging. You
Mhm.
showed some images earlier that you were able to detect anomalies that were higher than 50 degrees Celsius.
Yes.
Is this an arbitrarily set limit? Is it possible for the camera to be more sensitive than this? And how does the cladding look like when a drone identifies that there is a thermal anomaly there?
Okay. Um, Actually, uh, that limit, the greater than 50 degrees, we just set that because it came from one of our expert thermographer. So that above 50 degrees, or I think it's 56 degrees to be exact, uh, i- uh, it's already damaged, or heat is already leaking at the insulation. So um, I think how does it look like? Actually, the cladding itself in this photo, because I'm sorry because it's really small, the photo, but if you can look at it directly, the cladding is looks intact, but the what is damaged is the insulation underneath the cladding. I think in this case it's made of perlite. So this is how it looks like. So I didn't have the picture of what it looks like when you come near it, but the perlite it looks like it's been soaked with water and it's crumbling down, but the cladding itself is still intact. So it's really hidden underneath the cladding.
Okay, so I guess that's the value of it, right? You can see issues
Yes,
that are not visible
yes.
to us.
So the naked eye, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, you also showed a slide later on multispectral mapping. So how is this applicable to EDC operations? And perhaps is it something that you'd like to adapt for, say, environmental campaigns or something?
Yeah. Actually, this is still under study. But we're looking at the multispectral uh, multispectral sensors to detect the health of the vegetation. So, for example, if we're conducting discharge, well discharges, we can check if the surrounding vegetation is affected by those discharge. So, the multispectral camera will show a different color or a different gradient if it's already dried up or it's still okay. So basically detecting vegetation health.
Okay, then that's something that's quite unique for a geothermal project. Like to be able to have this sort of
Yeah.
monitoring for
Yeah.
health of vegetation. Okay,
Actually,
another.
this
Go ahead, sorry.
sorry. Just to add, this technology is already has it's been used in agricultural settings. So using multispectral cameras to detect if the crops are healthy or not. So basically, it's just an application to the our forests.
Okay, then. So we only have a few minutes, but maybe we end with one more question. This is a question on cost,
Okay.
no? On cost of the drone operation. So how did this whole application fare in terms of the cost of the drones, of the data acquisition compared to the cost of like the the traditional ways that inspection has been done?
Okay.
And so, how does this translate into future applications of the technology?
Okay. So for the costs, actually, we do not have a comparison, but uh, right now the price of the drones are relatively cheaper because the technology is really fast. So after the follow the in the next years, the prices of these drones will go down again. Uh, I think it's cheaper. This is uh, my own point of view. It's cheaper because we do not need to employ other equipment, like for example vehicle, gasoline to go in an area. Uh, it would take only a limited amount of hours or days to complete an activity rather than conducting it several days or weeks. And of course, in terms of safety, uh, of course, we do not want anyone to be harmed when doing this activity. So uh, I think it's a big factor that when workers are safe, uh, of course, it will not lead to additional costs to us or to the company.
I think that's the perfect way to end the webinar. Of course, we have safety, we have operational optimization, but safety is very important for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay then. So
Okay.
thank you, Eric, for that, for this whole presentation. I think it's been very interesting, and I'm looking forward to more geothermal companies adapting to drone technologies, and maybe we'll see more use cases of drones in the future.
Yeah. This is exciting.
Okay. Yeah, it is. So thank you, Eric, and thank you to everyone who attended. Have a happy weekend.
Okay. Thank you, Carlo. Thank you, everyone.